Hello, everyone, and welcome to the webinar on servant leadership. We're happy you could join us today for this session. For those of you who could not join us, we will follow up with the slide and presentation after. So before I start, I'm Annick Labrie, and I'm part of the JMEC team, and I'll be moderating this session today. I would also like to introduce our guest speaker, Diane Fulton. Diane is a part-time faculty in the Applied Human Sciences Department here at Concordia University. So I will now hand over to Diane.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much, Annick, for hosting and for JMEC for sponsoring. So I will be facilitating today's session, so welcome everyone. I did want to, just one sec. So today's topic, servant leadership. Today's topic, so servant leadership is, today I will be providing an overview of servant leadership. It's both a theory, philosophy, and also has some practical application to it. So I'm going to cover some of the main highlights of servant leadership. So today we'll cover an overview of it, the central tenets of it, looking also at some of the main principles. I have a couple of activities for you as well, so there's a practical application to the topic that we'll be doing today, and then we'll look at some of the support for the today's topic for servant leadership, also some of the global context, and of course we'll have an activity that we'll run through for everyone. So the learning goals for today, I really love to present topics. I also like to have the audience involved. So we'll be doing a small self-assessment that will just give you a little bit of insight into servant leadership and some of the principles and attributes that apply to you. Also, we'll be looking at doing a case study together. So that'll be the practical application to it. And then we can share some discussion around the topic and around the topic and share some best practices. So before we get started, if you want to look into the chat, what Annick will do is she's going to post a self-assessment for you. It'll take about maybe 5 minutes to do the self-assessment. So if I have my share on, so I'll turn it to Annick. If you look into the chat, there should be a link there for you, and Annick can confirm that for me.
Yes, I copied the link in the chat box.
Thank you. So take about 5 minutes. The purpose of the self-assessment is just to give you again some insight, some depth into servant leadership, the main principles of it. I will cover the main principles once you've completed the self-assessment. And please keep your score handy for the activity that will be coming up. Probably about 20 minutes from now. So take a few minutes, fill it out, and keep your score accessible.
Excuse me, it can't open. The link does not open.
Okay.
The chat box seems to be disabled.
Yes, it doesn't work.
Okay.
Yes, it's not working. The
Okay. So let's take a look.
It's working for me. It's you have to press the top one, not the second, because when I pressed the second one, it took me out of Zoom.
What I can do is I can show it on my screen here if you want to take a few minutes and just take a look. So there are 10 questions, 5, and use the scale from 1 to 5. So 5, almost always true. 1, almost never true. So if you just want to read through the 10 questions and then record your score.
I will share in the chat box the original URL for this test. So it would take a couple more minutes just to complete the self-assessment. You can scroll down a little bit, perhaps, so you can read. Okay, I do believe that the URL for accessing this online has been posted in the chat, so there's opportunity to access the self-assessment. So I'm going to bring this down and now develop these concepts in a little more detail. So thank you for taking the time to complete the self-assessment. So a brief overview of servant leadership. It's a theory that was developed by Robert Greenleaf. He first proposed it in 1970. It's a theoretical framework, but also provides some practical application. Robert Greenleaf believed and knew that by proposing the word servant, that there would be, it could be controversial. There was more of a negative connotation to the word, and it was intentional. He intentionally chose that word. He intentionally wanted to have an impact, to impress. He really wanted to take the sort of traditional view of leadership
where there's the hierarchy and it's you know, top down. He wanted to turn that, he wanted to invert that. He wanted to invert the pyramid, and so proposed the word servant. And in his choice of words, where it's servant leadership and not the leader as servant. So it was intentional. It was really intentional to grab people's attention, to get people thinking, to get people contemplating, you know, what does this really mean? And to want people to investigate more and to be curious and want to, you know, move forward and learn more about, you know, what servant leadership was all about. So Larry Spears, who is the executive director for the Greenleaf Center, he defines servant leadership this way. And in this definition, Spears is also proposing the 4 tenets of servant leadership. So it's a new kind of leadership. It puts serving others as the #1 priority. And the 4 tenets of it is increased service to others, a holistic approach, a sense of community, and sharing power and decision making. So the 4 tenets, what are they? Service to others, holistic approach, promoting a sense of community, sharing power, so service to others. Greenleaf really believed that in servicing and being of service to others, in elevating others, in helping people to rise up around you, that when you rise people up, not only do you rise them up personally, but you rise up what they are attached to or what they are working on or the work that they're involved in. So one of the tenets of servant leadership is the capacity as a leader to help others connect to and you know, to connect to their better selves. He also believed in terms of a holistic approach that the work and the worker were not separate things, that it was important to look at the whole person, to look at their spiritual growth, their not just their spiritual growth, but also how they connect to their community, how they connect to their families. It was really an opportunity to include, when developing someone, to include all aspects of who they are and what they're a part of. He believed in promoting a sense of community. He really believed that institutions alone were not able to provide human services. He really believed that in terms of being able to help others and support others, that it was important that people be accountable to each other, and that accountability came more from a sense of community than it did from institutions, again, being able to provide that sort of human services. That it was really important that that all people, the organizations they work in, the communities that they live in, that it was a system, and that it was important that it be all included when you're working with others and helping to develop and grow people. Sharing power and decision making is also one of the tenets of servant leadership. It was Greenleaf's belief that if the people that were the closest to, developing the products, servicing the products, interacting with clients, that these were the people that also needed to share in the decision making, needed to be a part of the decision making, and needed to, that their voice needed to be heard, and that they needed to be empowered to be able to execute, in order to be able to execute their jobs really effectively and efficiently, that they needed to be included as part of the process of making decisions and having the ability and the influence to be able to do that. So servant leadership and the 10 principles. So these 10 principles relate directly to the self-assessment that you completed. So question 1 is, begins with listening. Question 2, you have empathy. And then question 3, healing, and so on. So each one of the questions that you responded to relates directly to the 10 principles of servant leadership. So listening. So for me, listening is the one and only skill that everybody should learn. It's something that I teach. I put a lot of emphasis on it, and I always tell my students and my clients that listening does not mean I'm agreeing with you. Listening just means I'm listening for understanding. I'm listening with curiosity. I'm not listening with the intent to respond to you. I'm listening with the intent to understand and to get a deep understanding of where you stand, what's important to you, what are the lenses that you're using to look through the world. And so that leads us into empathy. And I think deep listening builds on empathy, having the capacity to walk in people's shoes, to have the capacity to really see the person for where they are and what they're at. And maybe I don't agree with everything, but I can certainly have some, I can cultivate and deepen my understanding and have empathy for them. It's important to have the ability to heal oneself, but also to heal others so that people can transform. And healing could, take on something that's whether it's healing relationships or, could be physical healing, of course, but it's really the capacity to really look at people as a whole and then be able to help them to transcend, situations or circumstances that they're in. Developing awareness is tough. Awareness has always been tough for me. I always believed that once I had awareness, that was it. I could change. But that's not been the case over the years. I've learned that awareness is the first step, and just because I'm aware doesn't mean that I'm going to be able to do it bigger, better, and different. So that's always been a big disappointment for me, frankly, because awareness should equal change, and unfortunately it doesn't. So, but awareness is important to developing my capacity to understand myself, to know, again, what lenses am I looking through to see the world, and what lenses other people are looking through. So it's really having the capacity to develop a sense of awareness. Persuasion is important. This was important in that it's not top down. So it's not directing or telling, or it's really engaging and helping people to be able to see their potential, but also encouraging them, coaching them might be a different word, to really help them, again, to connect to what needs to be done, but having the capacity to be able to do that, to engage people. Conceptualization is really the capacity to see the future, to have a vision, and to share that vision so you can see how each of the principles are connected. That if I have the capacity to persuade, to influence, to engage people, then I will have the capacity to share a vision, to create a vision, to develop a vision together. Foresight is really looking forward. What can I see in terms of learning from the past, but also being able to project that into the future, to have a clarity of what might be coming up next and having the capacity to share that. Stewardship is really taking care of. Taking care of not just the institutions that we work in, but taking care of what's around us, and trusting that we are in good hands, and conveying that trust, that the institution will take care, that it will have a conscience. Commitment to growth, commitment to my growth, commitment to leader growth, commitment to the growth of others, having a deep belief that in order to elevate others, in order to share the responsibility, in order for people around to be able to, there has to be a deep belief in and a commitment in helping to grow those people and helping to grow their capacity and their potential, to be able to do and move forward. Building community, comes back to one of the tenets of that. In community, we're held accountable, we're liable for each other, we support each other, we're there for each other. So really building that sense of community, that sense of belonging, that sense of wanting, to be able to look out for each other and support each other. So again, it comes back to the model where you can see on the traditional side of leadership, there's a hierarchy, and it's, it's top down. And then at the bottom of it, you have what's referred to as the value stream. The value stream is what gives you most value. It's the front, it's the people who are front line. It's the people who are interacting. These models are built on organizations, and working in organizations. So it's really, the value is that when you look at the traditional side, the value is in the front, the people who are client facing, the people who build the product. the people who interact, with the people who are designing and will eventually, present or implement or, sell to clients. So, and on the servant side, the value stream is on top. So what Greenleaf believed was that the people who were going to provide the most value, who had the most understanding, who knew their jobs the best, who could communicate the most about what the product was, or what the service was, or what the knowledge was, that those are the people that leaders needed to connect with first, because they were the ones who were going to add the most value, and then the hierarchy goes it's an inverted pyramid, which was what he intended when he said servant, when he used the word servant. He intended to invert it. He intended to put the bottom on top. And so the model here is an illustration of what that looks like. So there is support and criticism for the model, for sure. For Greenleaf's theory. So on the support side, it avoids power traps, it builds consensus, it builds a follower empowerment, a sense of egalitarianism. The emphasis is holistic, so it's a whole approach. It's a whole approach in terms of developing the person, growing the person. It also has an emphasis on empowering people, teamwork. It's really, it's situated as being able to really speak well to organizations or associations that have more of a flat type of hierarchy, and so it lends itself well. It really puts the people who are doing the work closer to who the leaders are, so the theory lends itself well to that. Decisions are based on collectivity. It's based on collaboration, working together, making decisions together. On the flip side, there's criticism for it, for sure, that it remains grounded. It's philosophical, that there's a less practical application to it. It's believed that it's accused of perpetuating gender bias, that it has a theology that upholds more of a patriarchal type of norms. It questions its practicality, the ability to implement it, that it can also, whether this collective sort of community type philosophy, if that lends itself, if it lends itself, or if it's compatible with today's emphasis on individual effort and performance. So whether it's contrary to that, and whether it can be in support of that. So in a global context, what we're looking at here is how servant leaders in today's context, and this is part of the activity that we'll be doing in a moment. One of what we're facing today in terms of the coronavirus, the impact it's had on my world, on your world, on our immediate world, our communities, the world at large, is enormous. It's one of the biggest challenges, obviously, that people walking the earth have ever faced. And so how is that being managed? What are we seeing leaders do? Who is emerging? And how is when we look at who is emerging, when we look at some of the more successful stories of how the virus is being managed in communities, and there are many stories I went through many stories of how this is being handled and managed. And really, leaders who are in the forefront, leaders who are deemed being more successful. We have Jacinda Ardern, who has been in the news lately. So this is pulled right out of the headlines, in the news lately, and the characteristics that describe her are things like compassion and empathy, things like humility, collaboration, a sense that she's walking alongside the people of New Zealand. She's on the news. She's very clear. She has clarity, she's engaging people, she's believing in people, she's elevating people. So these are all, you know, characteristics, these are all descriptions that describe, you know, as we went through the tenets and we went through, you know, the principles of servant leadership, she's embodying that. And has been successful in her country in terms of, you know, flattening the curve is the jargon, and she's been successful, you know, in keeping as many people as possible safe, and keeping as many, you know, people, you know, keeping people safe, you know, and being able to slowly keep, you know, bring the country back, you know, to normal, whatever that will look like. So she has been in the news as well. I was very also going through the research, looking at young activists. You know, we have, you know, Autumn Peltier, who is our Canadian girl, and also Malala Yousafzai, who, you know, advocates for education for young women. And again, when you look at the slogans and you look at the quotes, you know, that it's in being of service to others. And I believe that they embody this, you know, they're showing us, they're showing the path. When we look at, you know, past and present, more of our leaders, you know, that have spawned great movements and been instrumental in helping moving the world forward, and have done it, you know, from all different levels of, you know, whether they've been in government or not been in government, but have motivated and inspired, and are described as, excuse me, and are described as embodying, again, you know, servant leadership qualities and principles of. So as you read through, you know, some of the quotes, you know, it's being of service to others, you know, and elevating others, and helping others to elevate, you know, and embrace their best self. And so we can see, I believe, that we can see that in our communities, you know, those that are listening, are demonstrating empathy, that are elevating others, that are building communities, that are inspiring, and the list goes on and on. You know, we've been in the news lately too, who's also a favorite of mine, is Greta Thunberg, you know, who's 15, 16 years old, and is, you know, on the world stage, and, you know, pulling people to her and helping people and elevating, and, you know, together we rise, right? Okay, so here's going to be our opportunity to practice what we've been listening to, and what you've been working on. So what I've done is I've designed a case study, which there will be a link put in chat for that. You will be assigned randomly into groups. So there's a link in chat. And so here's what I can do is I will show you, I can pull it up for you, what you're going to be seeing in chat. So this is the case study that you'll be looking at. And so the person, I'm going to assign you randomly in groups. So the person in your group who has the highest score, that will be the servant leader, and will also be the regional director. If there are two people who have similar scores, then you can just flip a coin, or you can just decide who might take on that role. So this is, the case study is focused on a safe return to school. The Ministry of Education, we know, has mandated all schools to go back to open up in the fall. The news headlines are very disturbing, right? There's 3 teachers in the States who shared a classroom. They got coronavirus. One of them passed away. All 3 teachers were wearing masks, gloves, hand sanitizers, following the rules. So a task force has been put together, which includes the regional director, and it includes members for ABC Elementary School. Now, ABC Elementary School is the school that is tasked to open up in the fall. There's the principal, the teachers, resource teachers, members of a parent group. These are all part of the task force, along with the regional director. So the task force, which will be you, will be tasked with putting together, you know, the preliminary proposal of how to return safely. So again, the regional director will be the servant leader. Other members will be the voices for the people you represent. If there's 5 roles, but if there's 6 or 7 people in your group, then the extra roles can be taken on either by being teachers or being part of the parent group. You'll have about 15 minutes to discuss and work together, and then we'll, you know, come back to the classroom for some discussion and some questions. In the link that you will find, there's a problem-solving worksheet. So this is active, so you can type in this just to record some notes for yourself if you would like. And also the 10 principles of servant leadership are also in here. Remember that the questions that you answered, question 1 relates to the first, and then question 2 to the second. So that's how the 2 are linked and lined up together. Okay, so this is the link that is in chat that you may open up so you have access to it. I'm going to randomly assign you into breakout rooms. We'll look at what we have. So I can put you into 6 rooms. I will automatically do that. There will be, oops. 5 or 6 people in each room. So here we go. So you have about 15 minutes. I will, of course, send in time so that you'll know. And here we go. You will receive a prompt to that you'll select to go into the breakout room. And here you go. People are slowly coming back into the room. Oopsie, whoops, 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 whoops. Okay, welcome back. Thank you all so much. So a variety of experiences, to say the least, in terms of person against technology. I think we prevailed to various degrees. So congratulations. So for the technology, I know that for some of you, you were able to access the link, some of you were not. So the big picture of the activity was meant to take the self-assessment that you did, link it to the case study in terms of, you know, having a discussion, but trying to practice, you know, some of the servant leadership principles. So I just have a couple of questions for those of you that were able to at least have a discussion, begin the process. So how was your experience as the servant leader? How was your experience? So those of you that, again, were able to have discussions, chime in and let me know. So those of you that were able to have discussion in your group and to work with the case study a little, tell me a little bit about that experience and how that went for you.
Hi, Diane. Do you want us to talk or chat? Write in chat.
Oh, yes. Okay, so you can write in chat as well. Because I'm sharing my screen, I don't have access to all the functionality. So if you're typing in chat, that's great. Whoops. But you can also speak out. You can also speak out into the classroom if that's easier for you rather than writing.
I raise my hand. Diane.
Yes.
Ingabert speaking here.
How are you?
Yeah, I had a very good experience of listening to my colleagues in the group. They brought to me ideas that I didn't even imagine. And I was lucky that one of my colleagues, when she started speaking, I knew the case study, it was expected. So it was very good experience to listen to my colleagues as servant leaders.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Someone else?
Yeah, I can share.
Sure.
It was a bit stressful at the beginning because it felt like a heavy responsibility, but it was it was good to start with dividing the roles and asking everybody's input. And we all were aware of the situation and the case and had our different perspectives to add. And I more kind of facilitated than gave my opinion. But when situation needed, I kind of added some input from what I know.
Okay. Thank you. Were you aware when you were having your discussion that of some of the principles of servant leadership, you know, the listening, the empathy, building community, were you aware of some of those? And if so, can you share your experience?
Can you guys hear me? Yeah. I think.
Yes, I can, yes.
Great, thank you very much. Yeah, I think it's very interesting, but I would say that for my part, I don't want to speak for my group, but I think that intuitively those principles just came naturally in conversation. We actively listen to each other. And I had this sense that we really tried to put ourselves in the other person's shoes and to try to see the situation from their perspective. But I have to say that I wasn't thinking about the 10 principles explicitly in having the conversation, but I think some of them came out naturally. Yeah.
So building on what you're saying about them coming out naturally, and I think, you know, from the three of you, there are four of you that have shared, what does that mean? It came out naturally. What do you think that means?
Well, definitely, I think the atmosphere or the experience made it in such a way that we wanted to be empathetic to each other. And there was perhaps this click or this chemistry in the conversation in which we wanted to hear everyone's opinion about the situation. Yeah, I guess, and I think the subject in itself, we were talking about schools, children's future, and as well as the well-being of teachers. So I think the subject made it in such a way that it was very humanistic in itself. We were talking about education. So I think, yeah, I don't know if that explains, I don't know if that answers the question.
I guess what I'm hearing from, you know, the sharing is that there are perhaps innate traits that we have that come forth. The topic is huge. You know, it's huge. It's touching everybody in all kinds of ways, and it will continue to do so in ways we just don't know yet. So I think the topic itself, you know, is can maybe even lend itself, you know, to being open and listening. And what can you see yourself using with, you know, sort of, it's an introduction obviously to servant leadership, but can you see yourselves using, you know, some of the practical side of servant leadership? Could you see yourselves using that in your world? Question to everybody. Are you using it in your world?
I would say to some degree, you know, I think in particularly when it comes to, I'm not sure if I'm on the right track here, but, you know, in terms of the listening principle, the empathy, you know, the first 3 or 4 rules, I would say definitely. And also being open to other people's vision as well as my own, I would say.
Okay. Anyone else like to share? Someone who would like to add, you know, to our discussion?
Well, Alexander here. So I just, if you remember the quote of John C. Maxwell, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So you should care all the time for everybody. So this is my approach to every single situation. First, you have to deliver something. After that, you may ask.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yes, we're certainly living in, for me anyway, extraordinary times. And I was having a discussion with my dear colleagues the other day about the sort of global consciousness shift that's happening, and that I'm becoming quite, you know, in the learning curve, felt that I was sitting somewhere else, and now believe that I'm now back at the beginning for a lot of these conversations, and learning and realizing what I don't know and don't even know what I don't know. And so it's become a real learning curve, and to be able to grab onto, you know, the pace of change, and then to turn that into, you know, something that's concrete that I can use and that I can share with others, is enormous. Is enormous. From, you know, from my family to teaching in the classroom, you know, to being an entrepreneur. It's wow. It's really huge. So I think it's, you know, the times are shaping us, and for me a lot of it is soft clay we don't know yet, you know, but I think collectively we have opportunities to shape, and so it's going to be eye-opening, I think, what's still to come. And so I really, there is opportunity for some questions. I'm aware of time, but if you have questions, you can put them in the chat. We can save the chat, I think, and then, you know, respond. If you do have questions, I'm happy to take your questions. Okay. So then I will say a big thank you. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for your participation. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for all your contributions and for your hard work. It was really a pleasure being here with you today. I hope that there are some takeaways for you. For those of you that would be interested in this format, in terms of you know, this type of training. JMEC does also sponsor a leadership sprint. It follows a similar type of format where there's self-assessments, there's group activities, there's discussion with colleagues. So you're welcome to, you know, visit the JMEC site. That's John Molson Executive Center. You're welcome to visit that site and investigate a little further if, you know, these topics, if this format is something that's of interest to you. I think that you would you know, find something that could pique your interest. So again, thank you all so much. Thank you for joining me here today. Thank you, big thank you to Annick for her behind the scenes work and helping to pull us together and making this, you know, functional. So deep appreciation to Annick and to JMEC, John Molson Executive Center, for helping out and for all their support and for sponsoring us today. So turn it to you, Annick.
Yes. So unfortunately, our webinar has come to an end. On behalf of JMEC, I would like to thank Diane for her time and thank you all for taking your time to attend this presentation. As I said earlier, we will share the slides and video with you shortly. And we're sorry about the technical glitch. Concordia has been experiencing some IT problem this morning, so the files were working fine yesterday, but this morning we had some problem. So stay tuned for upcoming webinars by visiting our website at concordia.ca/JMEC, and you can click on the events tab in the navigation to see all our upcoming events. Also, you can join our mailing list from our website. And you can connect through our Facebook and LinkedIn page to know everything about JMEC. So I wish you all a lovely afternoon. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.